swear we would have better luck if we used a typewriter instead of laptops and internet. Good evening, everybody. It's the Thursday night American Scouser TV Thursday night podcast, or as the cool kids are calling it, well, it's just us three cool kids, to be fair. We have Scott again and Jamie again. Welcome back, boys. How are you?
Coolest of kids. Oh, I said this coolest of kids. We're ready. We're ready to
we're ready.
yell at each other.
Jamie, how are you, son?
Yeah, we're doing well. We're getting there. More therapy needed.
How's the wee one?
Oh, 100%. She might make an appearance later on when she's crying here halfway through the podcast. That is the beauty of live podcasting.
Yep. A good evening to BJ as well. So do we have a 60-minute news this week, Jamie?
60 minutes, 60 seconds.
60
we do,
minutes,
yes.
60 seconds.
I'll sit back, turn on the Xbox if Jamie wants to go for 60 minutes.
A full monologue, full diatribe. Yes, we do. Plenty to talk about, so we'll just jump in, shall we?
No. I didn't spend all this time doing this. 60 seconds.
The mugshot. Brilliant. We'll jump straight in, folks. It's the LFC news in 60 seconds. Billy the Kid Cometio has rejoined the Reds from Austria Vienna and scored an absolute worldie from inside his own half. If you haven't seen that, definitely check that out. Tyler Morton on loan at Rovers signs a new long-term deal with the Reds. He's got 28 appearances in all fixtures for Blackburn this year, so that's good. And obviously the big news, if you have been living under a rock, is the new line of LeBron and LFC collab. Few images have been leaked and plenty more to be coming, apparently. Moving on to the LFC women, we've signed Sophie Lundgaard, 20-year-old Danish youth international with more than 100 senior games under her belt. And finally, we're staying with the ladies team again, and definitely sad news. Jilly Flaherty is the record appearance holder in the WSL. She's called it a day on her historical career due to losing her father just before Christmas and wanting to spend more time with her family. 4 WSL titles, FA Cup, UEFA Cup winner, and everyone at LFC, all the fans worldwide are wishing her well.
And that's the 60-second news.
Excellent work, Jamie.
Yep.
60 seconds. Oh man, you'll never have a career at NBC.
I was in and out. You're the editor here.
That's true. That's true.
Jamie, you're getting sacked
David
in the morning. You're getting sacked in the morning.
Probably very, very probably in real life. So let's look at the first of this week's topics, and we are going to talk about where's the midfielder money FSG. It is now the 13th, coming up to the 13th of January. We're halfway through the month. We've bought Gakpo, to be fair, which is a nice addition, but not what we need. The question is, are we having our chains yanked, boys? Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we're getting strung through the month, and we're gonna have plenty of rumors, whether it be a backing coming soon, whether it be a new player signed, a new player we're scouting, something like that. We're gonna go through the transfer window, and frankly, I think that if fans are optimistic about signing a midfielder, particularly this window, I think they got to take a reality check.
Jamie, what do you think?
A lot of figures get touted around. The war chest apparently, 200 and so million for the summer, but that's not going to help us now, especially if we can't get to where we want to be in the league. It's a fair question. We definitely need fresh legs in there. So the money has to be there, because we haven't spent, and we haven't had midfielders. I know we keep going round and round and round on this midfielder topic, but it's been going on since we won the Champions League against Spurs. Mm-hmm. I was reading somewhere that the only player to have left that squad by his own volition, that hasn't had a contract run out, hasn't asked to leave. The only player we've sold is Ryan Brewster.
Wow.
That's frightening. When you consider, apparently Spurs, the same squad that Spurs had that day, they've only got 6 players that are still there. We've got all of them, minus the ones that have ran out their contracts and all the rest of it. We've had a lot leave, absolutely, since that day. But the only one that we've actually sold was Ryan Brewster.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, do you think there's from FSG and even some sort of complicity from Jurgen Klopp, that there's a lot of jam tomorrow in their statements? There's a lot of, it'll be better next season, or it'll be the next window, and we'll have that money available. But we're still waiting at this point, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, there's this, telling saying that they say here, that say if you keep thinking about tomorrow, you won't think about today, and it's a reality that we've been living in without even kind of acknowledging it. We've completely been focused on whether we're going to have something in the future, whether we're going to have money coming in for the next transfer window, and we get there and we hear that we're going to have money for the next transfer window. I'm not particularly the type of person that is yelling for boatloads of money. I think that, obviously we see what Chelsea did today, maybe as a example of throwing money at your problem. You're still going to have problems. But the reality is if we keep looking for that, idea that next transfer window, we're going to have a ton. Next transfer window, we're going to have a ton. Well, we're in the transfer window. We're here. Where was the plan for the last 4 months to acquire funds to get here to fix our current reoccurring issues? Obviously, we have injury problems, right? Gakpo comes in at a time in which our attackers are not fit. But the reality is that's not a reoccurring, and that is not a long-lasting issue. We have very talented attackers coming back from injury within the future, in the next 2 months. So when we look at our reoccurring issues, what are we planning? Where we keep saying in the future, we're here, we're in the transfer window. Where's all the money?
Jamie, I read today that FSG said they weren't interested in selling the Boston Red Sox, which means that it almost feels like they know which side their bread is buttered on financially, and it doesn't seem to be buttered on the Liverpool side. And we also had recent talk of the investment or possible takeover. We kind of had this situation as fans before where to a lesser extent, Rick Moore and Ian Ayres and all that kind of pulled the wool over our eyes about how much money we had available. Then the Texas Muppets really pulled the wool over our eyes about what money was available. FSG have been very steady owners. They don't want to put the club in jeopardy, but there's a difference between not putting the club in jeopardy and speculating to accumulate, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, you're asking the wrong guy about financials when it comes to American sports. I haven't a clue. I wouldn't even begin to hazard a guess. I would dare say it's quite a lot of money. I know Liverpool are valued at four bill, and we're not going to entertain anything underneath that. The whole thing has always been, are we looking for investment or are we looking for a full sale? I think FSG are always going to look out for themselves. They haven't got to that sort of position without being shrewd operators. I guess, as fans, all we can ask for is that they do what's right by us, because, we've stood by them. And look, they haven't been perfect. They've definitely faltered along the lines on a few occasions. Whether that be publicly, whether that be behind closed doors, they have faltered. Nobody's perfect, but at the end of the day, they want what's best for them, and we want what's best for us. And I'm not sure if I hope that they would be thinking along the same lines,
Scott, like, we talk about transfers into the midfield, and generally fans will think about either somebody obscure that they have on Football Manager or FIFA, or a big name.
Right.
But we don't really need. We do need rejuvenation creatively, but what we really seem to need right now is somebody that can stop the opposition more than somebody who can create the goals, because we have enough of that up front. Surely it's not that hard between the scouting people and the finance people to find a $30 to $50 million defensive mid who can do the simple jobs and protect the defense, which is, as we'll talk about later, not as good as it has been.
Right. And maybe we're at the point where we're kind of succumbing to the idea that a 30 to 50 million pound player is one that's going to come in. I read a great article recently, and obviously we're going to speak about Brighton a little bit later in the pod, but alluding to the idea that Liverpool should be doing our business more like Brighton, right? More like bringing players in for 2 million and under, developing them into excellent players, and then selling them off for a profit to create a stable business as well as a competitive team. Now, Brighton, for their market value, are a very competitive team. But I think there's something to be said about when we have the expectation of players, the expectation of quality. Well, what if we bring in a 2 million pound player? How do you think the fans are going to feel, right? What if we bring in a 20-year-old? And obviously, I know that we're linked to the, I can't quite remember his name, the young lad from Nice right now who looks like a mammoth CDM. But,
Thuram, wasn't it? Is that him?
Thuram, that's right. And, as fans, I feel like we are our own worst enemy, because we're going to be begging for the best, begging for the top players. We're going to be angry or disappointed if we bring in somebody who is quality for cheap, and then somebody who's in that 30 to 50 million pound range, we're going to say, oh, they're good. They'll be okay, but I still want the best.
Jamie, just to kind of expand on that point from Scott, those clubs tend to exist where they have, cheap players that they find and then build into multi-million players. Let's say like Sevilla, or like the Portuguese teams, Benfica, Sporting Lisbon, etc. But they also tend to be monolithic teams in their own leagues. The Celtic, for example, have done great in the Japanese market. They've brought a lot really, really tasty looking players that look great in Scotland, but didn't look so hot in the Champions League. Liverpool expectations are a little bit different. Do you think that kind of approach, if our club uses it, is almost like an accountant's approach to the game? It's almost like a marketing, trying to play the stocks or something like that, where you get a low investment and a high return. But we don't want that. We want to win, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, look, you guys are making great points, in fact. And I think there's a couple of ways I want to attack this debate. Is Liverpool? Look, I know what I said at the start of the hour. The only player we've sold since Champions League football is Ryan Brewster. Actually sold, not a contract has run out or has requested to leave. Liverpool aren't a selling club anymore, or at least shouldn't be, and that can be argued differently. Your Suarez and Coutinho's aside, hopefully we've moved on from that now, where we don't sell our best players. Is my point there. I would also argue the fact that we kind of are doing that business, just in a younger profile. Your Ben Duggs, your Harvey Elliott's, your Fabio Carvalho's, great youth coming through. We really do. But I would love to see us steer away from being known as a selling club and having to sell to buy. And a lot of people are out there right now saying that yes, that is exactly the position we're in right now, because we have to let go of a a non-domestic product to bring one in. You know, we can bring in a homegrown talent, but we do need to get rid of an overseas player to bring another player in to fill our roster currently. So, you know, one has to go out in order for one to come in right now. But yeah, I mean, it's a fair point to level. You know, again, I get the whole idea of taking a gamble on a you know, a small fee, a potential great player, but yeah, absolutely, Brian. Adrian definitely fits that bill. We should probably be looking to get rid in order to bring in a midfielder, and that's definitely what we've discussed in the Discord channel. I know we discuss a whole bunch of shit on there, but if you're not on the Discord channel, get involved. It's great crack. Definitely can be a bit of a time suck though, and you'll have
Jamie,
to listen to.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
you were mentioning, you know, how we were doing that on the far more youthful side of things, that type of business of buying a player, seeing their potential, rising to the occasion, and then we can possibly sell or utilize them, whether that be for more money than we bought them for, or whether they're, you know, better than the players we have at our disposal currently. Don't you think that because we're now relying on those players to play for us currently, we are seeing Harvey Elliott be a reoccurring starter. We're seeing Bendoa coming off the bench because, frankly, we have no other options right now. I feel like that is almost a case in point why fans are angry at this, right? That we're mad at this current model of, you know, transfers.
Yeah, but look, we're fickle, right? Fans are very fickle. It's we're easily bought when it comes to superstars. You know, we're all too used to FIFA career mode. You know, the bullshit footy manager. You know, we're too used to the headlines and announce Mbappe now and all this. So I mean, I guess, you know, it's very easy for fans to be swayed, and a big signing definitely does that, and it does inject a bit of life into the club. But you know, it can be short-sighted, you know, with regards to big superstar signings like Bellingham. Bellingham's going to be brilliant, but he's not going to be the be all and end all. He's not going to answer questions straight away. He's not going to be the cure. He's definitely going to help, but you know, it is short-sighted, those big signings. And if we can maybe pull out a few smarter, shrewder business moves and still get Bellingham, then we'd be better for it.
Let me kind of expand on that point, and it'll help us to move into the next topic for the night. And we can still talk about the transfers because it's part of it. But in terms of the way you say the fans perceive the headline signings and the superstars, etc. We've won a Champions League. We've been in another Champions League final, and we've been in another Champions League final up against Real Madrid both times. Yeah, and that's kind of where we see ourselves as a club, really. Our traditionally, and it's where we should see Liverpool Football Club, is against Real Madrid and Barcelona and AC Milan and Bayern Munich. But the current policy is almost like an Ajax policy, isn't it? It's almost like they're expecting us to be happy with a 5-year wave, and then that ends and we have to start another 5-year wave. And instead of being the royalty of Europe with 6 Champions Leagues, we might be almost like they're expecting us to be happy with a Champions League final appearance every 10 years. Do you think that's a misguided thought, Scott, or do you think that's that might be on the money?
I would like to think it's misguided. I would like to think that we as a club are having the expectation internally to say we don't want to falter. We don't want to fall off what we've created the last 5-6 years. And it all comes down to this ability to look beyond the success in the now, right? To be able to grow. You know, Brian mentioned how we needed these sort of in between transfers 3 seasons ago. It's the fact is that we need to prepare for the future, and it seems like we have in a sense that we have these really young players, these 17 years old, these 18-year-old players that have incredible potential. But when it comes to the 30 and plus year olds that are starting to the 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds with their potential, that is a big fucking gap. Where is the median? You know, we see it in our attack. Hell, we see it in our defense. We have incredible, you know, young talent in Konate and obviously Kostas and you know, Ramsey, if he ever decides to get let out of his hole, we'll be able to see that build. But the midfield, which has been vitally important for the last 5 years of success, has seemingly gone unnoticed or maybe ignored.
Jamie, just as the new dad of the trio, let me do my best impression of fatherly advice. But it seems to me that the club in general, FSG, etc., they say a lot of things, but as any good father would tell their kids, actions pretty much speak louder than words, and their actions haven't backed up the plans that they keep telling us about, have they?
I mean, yes and no. You know, they've done a lot right, but again, they've definitely faltered in various areas. You know, they're putting a lot of money into the club right now, the stadium. You know, they are trying to leave us in a better position than when they got us, and that is true. As to Scott's point about the median and finding that 23 to 27 entering your prime years players, we're lacking. We're severely lacking right now. Yes, we do have Trent, Konate. We've got a good quality midfield and up front. We're lacking somewhat. And like Brian said here in the comments, potential is seasons away. A much wiser man than me told me a long time ago that potential means you're not worth shit right now. And that's kind of stayed with me. So the future is bright, but we know from the past, Liverpool have always had a great academy. But as we've always said on this podcast, you know, there's millions that haven't made it through the ranks, whereas the ones who do stick with you, you know, your Gerrards, your Fowlers, your Trents, everyone. You know, there's plenty of great talent that have come up through the academy, and you know, maybe out of this current crop, there will be 2 or 3 that can come along the way and really show their worth in those coming seasons. But yeah, potential right now is certainly an untapped. You know, you can't weigh it; it's not worth anything. So I don't know. You know, it like I said before, it's easy to go out and buy superstars. Maybe it's not easy for some clubs. Maybe this is the model that they're after. Maybe they're being exceptionally frugal. Why, I'm not so sure, because, you know, like I said before, we're a 4 billion worth squad entity right now. The stadium looks amazing. The rebuild is amazing. If only there was a bit more money splashed during the January windows.
Scott, it seems to me, if we keep talking about potential, it's almost like a built-in excuse to say, you know, okay, we didn't do as well this year, but next year we didn't do as well this year, but you know, these lads they're going to progress. But I'm pretty sure there's a statistic that shows that most teams that are successful buy their success. They don't develop it. It's very rare that you can actually develop a golden generation, even in the modern game, at least.
Yeah,
we can't talk about we can't talk about the Busby babes and all that because it was a whole different financial landscape. But certainly since the you know, Ferguson's kids and all that kind of stuff, even that team had purchased stars that bolstered the youth. We're not doing that though, are we? I mean, like, we talk about that median missing, that 24 to 27 year old age range. But if we were looking to fill that, surely we would have been buying 22 and 23-year-olds pretty much every season to make sure that they were all aging into that 26 to 28-year-old age gap at the same time.
Yeah.
So something is broken along that line of communication, isn't it?
You're precisely it. And Jamie, when Jamie was talking about potential and Jamie was talking about like the youthful signings, thought came into my head. I'm like, it's a stock. They're a stock. You're buying low and hoping that it accumulates into something big. And the reality is look at some of our most successful players within the last 5 years, even the ones that have turned into superstars, the Mohamed Salahs, the Virgil van Dijks. When we purchased them, their stock was still low. People doubted them. They were not worth the money that they've accumulated into value from what we've had in the last 5 years. So, we talk about how successful superstar signings have been in the past for other teams. I mean, when was the last time we signed what unanimously can be considered across the footballing world? And obviously no player will ever have the appreciation of the entire world. But from other teams' fans say, yeah, that is a ready-made player. I can't recall one.
I think you're correct, but I think that leads me on to the next point then, which is
Verge. Yeah, Verge is definitely one.
This is the one I want to talk about. Okay, so we've been linked now with Moises Caicedo. We've been promised Jude Bellingham for months and months, if not a bit longer. The Bellingham is a lot of potential, but we talk about potential, but we've seen Steve Gerrard and Michael Owen and Robbie Fowler come on and take games by the scruff of the neck from day one, pretty much. Bellingham seems to be that type of player. There's no reason why we can't compete with his price on the face of it. But if we're going to go from him to Caicedo, who it's a bit of a downshift, does that again speak to the idea that they're telling us a lot of things, but what we're actually capable of doing is way less? Jamie?
I mean, boils down to that frugality again, doesn't it? I struggle with this anyway, being a bit of an older head. The modern day is mental. It's championship manager stuff. 100 mil for this, 150 for that. And players like Pogba and Neymar. They are the ones that kind of messed it all up because they're not worth 90 million. They're not worth 200. They're not worth all this. We should be after somebody who offers us good value for money, and sort of that 30 million to 40 million bracket seems much more up our street. Bellingham is, everybody keeps saying, he's generational talent. He's this, he's that, he's the other. Yeah, I think, it's crazy money, but when you look at it on the face of things, you're getting value for money. If he's going to be with us for, let's say, 6 to 7 years, if you're looking at him for 67 years, then that value works itself out. The Nunez money, it works itself out. I think that's a decent return on investment. So it's a crazy time where players are worth 150 million and blah blah blah, and what it means to us versus what it means to somebody else with a lot more money is another factor that can be brought into it. But I would definitely say, a good player worth at 30 to 40, and Bellingham is needed. Like Gally said, we need both, not just one. One or the other isn't going to cut it.
Scott, again, but that kind of speaks, though, doesn't it, to what we talked about, the comparison to Ajax, where they may be able to afford one high value player, but not two. We should be on paper competing with Real Madrid, Chelsea, City, to the lesser extent City, for players. But but it doesn't seem we are. And if we're going to be downshifting from 100 million quid Jude Bellingham to what, 40, 50, 60 million Moises Caicedo from Brighton of all places,
Right.
it really does tell us that they're really hoping that Klopp has the magic every single season, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's a kick in the teeth. Frankly, it's not riding luck, but you're riding your chips. And Jurgen Klopp has done a fantastic job in taking players that have real quality and developing them into even better quality. But if we were to, let's say, have the money that could be used on a Jude Bellingham, save 20, 30 million pounds and buy 3 midfielders, I personally don't think that's worth it. I think that if we have the money at our disposal, we need to be going for those best talents, challenging, like you said, with a Real Madrid for a purchase, with a Manchester United, because these names that other teams seem to be linked with or genuinely interested in purchasing, Liverpool are essentially taking a back seat and saying, like you said, we have an excellent coach and we can take basically value signings and work with them. But if we are wanting to be the best team, if we are expecting to be the best team, subsequently, you expect the best players to be there too, right?
Jamie, in terms of you talked about fans being fickle, but if we saw the club buying that high ticket player every season over the course of 5 seasons, we'd be quite happy, wouldn't we? As opposed to seeing 3 cut price players who end up not quite making the grade. Although our need for that headline of Liverpool signs player would be satisfied, we'd still end up on the wrong end of the trophy chasing stick, wouldn't we?
Yeah, but I guess it's a fine balance, a fine line to tread when you're not just buying for the sake of buying. And I know we're in need of players right now. That much has been well documented. But to your point about Caicedo, and he'll have his day. He'll have a good chance to prove his point against us at the weekend. Unfortunately, if he has a good game, it's not necessarily great news because it means we're not doing our job either. So sorry, there's she's making herself
He's
known.
practicing for the "You Never Walk Alone's" later
That's
on.
right.
That's
So
perfectly okay.
I have her well drilled. Even since the womb, I've been singing to that one. So, but no, honestly, I think I know this one's a transitional year and a very difficult one, and it's difficult when you see teams like Chelsea blowing money left, right, and center. I'm probably not the best one because I kind of fall in the don't be blowing your money for just the sake of it. For if there's a good, I'm kind of with Klopp in certain regards where I would rather wait on the right player like he's done in the past, and maybe is doing with Bellingham, even though Bellingham's not guaranteed, and certainly not guaranteed to change the world overnight. Yes, more could have been done and absolutely should have been done to fill our ranks with better players than Arthur Melo on loan and things like that. But it's a difficult one.
Jamie, can I play devil's advocate with you?
No.
Because it's going to happen anyway, so you got no choice.
Yeah, that's my job, Scott.
But it comes to me. I just need to get it off my chest. I'm all for waiting for the right player. I prefer that. But to Gally's point about selling players maybe for a profit, had we signed Nunez for 10 million when we had the chance prior to him going to Wolves, let's say he didn't necessarily work out to the extent that, say, a Jude Bellingham would work out for our team. Would you take him on the team for a year and a half, and then sell him for a even small profit after a year and a half of being on the team?
But we don't do that. Like I said at the top of the hour, and maybe Gally wasn't here for it, but the only player we've sold actually without asking to be sold or running down a contract since our Champions League win against Tottenham was Ryan Brewster.
Yeah.
Is the only player we've actually, off our own volition, we've sold. And I mean, I get what you're saying, but we don't do that, do we? And we're trying to stay away from being a selling club, buying to sell. But I mean, I don't know.
But even take a player like Emre Can. I think he was kind of the first one in this new era that we've enjoyed to leave on a free, right? And was a quality player that at least could have accumulated some money for us. When we have him that we recognize is not going to be utilized within, 6 months of his contract ending, that January, I feel like we should be looking to part ways, even for a little bit of money.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. And it's easy to get. Look, we've done great business in the past, your Solankes and all the rest of it, but it's been lacking for whatever reason. And I mean, Gally says City sell to buy better, and he's not wrong, but I hate using City as our barometer. And I mean, they are, no matter what, they are our barometer because they're our rivals right now, or should be. We should be challenging them for the title every single year. Financially, we can't compete, and it's almost as if FFP, financial fair play, is an absolute joke to them, or certainly has been in the past few years.
It is.
It is. No, it absolutely is.
I think actually we're the punchline.
Yeah. And I mean, Gally says an example of good business. Yeah. Unfortunately, but like I said, financial fair play doesn't mean anything to them. Money means nothing to them when they have unlimited resources, or certainly seems like it. Yeah, it's hard to be on the moral high ground when you've got nothing to show for it. We're languishing down there in 6th place and begging out for somebody with legs.
And even more so, people, whether it's violating or going around the rules with no ramifications, we want to do it right. We want to be an example of good quality business. But when you're looking from afar at seeing essentially, like you said, fantasy football manager or FIFA manager mode, it puts a chip on your shoulder.
Let me tie those two thoughts together and kind of circle back to something Jamie said, about waiting for the right player to come along, like maybe Klopp is doing that. But the debate for us is the midfield. And surely, even at 100 million and 19 years old and being a project player in at least name, if not actuality, Jude Bellingham would walk into our midfield and improve it from day one, surely.
Yeah, without a doubt. And like you said, if that's the project player, if that's the player you expect the next generation to be built upon, then the money is well worth it. Jamie said it's the return on investment would be incredible. I read, did you guys see that we were interested in making Bellingham's father a scout for the club and maybe trying to bring his brother in as well, just to create a little bit more emphasis to bring the whole family on over. Yeah, if that's the business we're going to do, then by all means, whatever the money is, you can see that if that is the generation, built around, then that is our generational player. Whether it be worldwide generational, that is our generational player. And we would need to put what we have to down to make that next generation.
I mean, the feelers were out there for Bellingham long before he went to Germany.
Yeah,
that's the English media hype train, right? They build him up young. So in order for his career to progress, he moved to Germany and done it right and has really turned heads worldwide. And generational talent, may be the term that's being thrown around, but perhaps it is just. And if that's what it takes to bring him back to England and keep his family happy, then yeah, I guess do whatever it takes.
So let me end this part of it before we move on to the next section with one question for both of you. And you might have to. This might actually be a question for BJ if he's around from the stats thing. But has a team ever been built successfully and trophy winning where they've invested years ago in their kids and put them into the first team, and then 5 years later they start becoming this all conquering machine, and just based on youth players? Because the only thing I can think of right now is that so-called team of the 80s of Crystal Palace in the 1970s that was, I think, managed by Terry Venables. They had Vince Hilaire and all those who were, this is the team that's going to conquer the world. And they just fell apart because they didn't win when they needed to win. So other clubs just picked off their players. And it seems to me that maybe there's a danger of that happening to us yet again. We're just constantly talking about these players, the 17-year-olds, the 19-year-olds, bonding and gelling together. But when does that actually happen with a team that young? Even Fergie's kids won straight off the bat in 1992, 93.
But like you said, they weren't
is it a pipe dream, though?
They weren't just the kids, right?
But that's the point I'm making is
exactly.
Like Ferguson still bought stars to surround them with. Cantona, for example.
It was the famous Alan Hansen on Match of the Day that said you'll win nothing with kids.
Yeah, it's a great point.
It's a difficult one. I mean, everybody's immediately going to go to that Fergie team, but like everybody knows, they had that fine balance that we talk about of youthful exuberance and experience, which, we kind of do have. We've got your Milners, we've got your Harvey Elliott's working side by side. So,
the problem is, though, Jamie, is that Milner
Alan
could
asks
literally,
a great question, though.
Milner could literally be Harvey Elliott's dad. That's the problem. Yeah, we need our young kids to have big brothers rather than fathers running alongside them on the
Milner's
pitch.
Definitely the outlier. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he's probably the father of some of them as well. The amount of Ribena he drinks. Well, let's move on to the next one, and we're going to talk about experience now. And this just has a nice little pun. Deja vu. So we talked to me and Scott. That's a good one, isn't it? We talked to me and Scott just before we went on air. And here's the point I want to put towards both of you and see what you think. Dejan Lovren, he was a good player on his day. He could have a game where he looked worse. You could see why we bought him. And then the next game, he could look like me playing for Liverpool right now. There was never an in-between or a level of consistency. We know Virgil has been injured, but at the same time, his since the last injury, his consistency has dropped a little bit. Do you think at this point we're now hoping that he gets back to what he was, and maybe that's never going to happen? Or do you think there's still that quality player in there? Scott, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think his quality is undisputed. I think that he does have the ability to be the best in the world at any given point, when fitness permitting, obviously. He will always be a composed player. And I think because of that, whether the, mistakes happen, things like that, he just looks composed. So we'll never have the opinion of him that we say may have had for Lovren, or could see, giving slack to whether it's Matip or Gomez or, Konate with, how, let's say, the Brentford game went. We would give slack to those players, but I think that Virgil has accrued some sort of respect from the fans. So even if he does have a howler, even if he doesn't have, that great of a game, we almost kind of turn a blind eye, just say, oh, well, it's Virgil. He'll be back. I personally think that he will still be just as capable of being a great player. But even if he's not up to that stuff, he will never get treated like Dejan or any of his partners.
Jamie, in terms of, I mean, Scott is right that we will give him a lot more leeway because of his reputation and his success with us. But let's be old. Let's be oldies here with our flat caps and our scarves and our cups of Bovril. Bob Paisley wouldn't have stood for it, though, would he? He would have got rid of him as soon as his standards started to decline instantly. Do you think that maybe Klopp is just a little bit too sentimental about that? And we really do need to start, as Gally says, start shoehorning Konate into that leadership role and making him the linchpin of the defence.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but I think, look, the game's evolved a long way since Shankly days, and that cutthroat style maybe doesn't lend itself to Verge's situation right now. I think Verge himself has to evolve, but look, let's be honest, the midfield and other defenders haven't really been helping him out a whole lot this year, so it's been a difficult season to judge him because everything's been so flimsy in front of him. So I think Verge's game itself has to evolve a little bit. He's never going to have that pace that he had pre-injury. But what he does have, like Scott was saying, was he has the mind to that Maldini-esque quote where, if I have to make a slide tackle, it's already too late. I've already made a mistake. Mm-hmm. I think Verge is that type of player, like Scott was saying. He's very calm in situations. He knows how to read the game. So I think having a player like Virgil is going to always be invaluable in your squad because those young players like Konate can learn a lot of somebody like Virgil, because that sort of composure, it's very difficult to teach. I'm not saying it can't be taught, but it certainly can be. And I think having somebody like Virgil with the international experience, with the medals he's won, the games he's played, the teams he's been with, Celtic, Southampton. I mean, he is a colossal player and a mentality monster, and we kind of need to get back to that. And I think having Verge on the team is definitely, I mean, it's a no-brainer. He has to be there. And if centre backs, yes, I know the game has moved on and changed. It's got a whole lot faster. But like I said, his reading of the game is pretty much second to none.
Scott, as Jamie says that, and as Brian Shelton said as well, maybe he has to change the way he plays and the way he defends. But he was the organizer of the high pressing offside trap line. Yep. If he has to change the way he plays, does that mean we have to change the way the back four plays to accommodate his newfound lack of pace, so to speak, and play to the strengths of his intelligence?
Yeah, without a doubt. Listen, we're giving him credit as he deserves for the brilliant mind or the composure that he may have, but we can't deny the fact that Virgil van Dijk was as good as he was in the peak of us winning the Champions League and the Premier League because of his physical attributes, his recovery speed, his strength on the ball or in a 50-50. When he was, pre-injury, he wasn't necessarily playing like, let's say, a Maldini. Now he has the ability and the knowledge, the know-how to play that level or play that style, but he can't make that decision for himself. We need to alter our, tactical team play to mold what he can transition into, maybe not utilizing his physical abilities and utilizing more of his mental capacity. But for sure, Macka, we need to adjust to that, because if he doesn't have the, recovery sprint speed, or he doesn't have the physical ability to recover and save maybe a blunder from a teammate, clearly that's why we're leaking goals.
I mean, I'm going to jump in here, Macka. I'm no coach. You are. So I kind of want to put it to you. I don't necessarily agree with what Scott's saying. He said a lot that's right, but I don't think we have to change a whole lot. I think having a player like Virgil, especially when we won the when we won the league, we had Gomez there, and Gomez is rapid. So, I think having two centre backs that are yin and yang, is kind of not a bad tactic to have. I think Verge could be that ball playing player. I think, again, we're talking about the midfield helping out. Again, the linchpin, Fabinho, hasn't really been up to scratch, helping out, breaking up the balls through, etc. But I don't necessarily think we have to change the high press, the high line. And I know a lot of fans are calling out for it. And I can certainly see the benefit of us right now shoring up our defense and being a bit more reserved. But I don't necessarily think that we have to make full-scale tactical changes to our high press or our high line, even though certain games definitely call for it. But I mean, you tell me, you've coached kids, right? I think it's difficult. I think inevitably you're going to see some evolution in tactics anyway, because that's the way football works. You get it gets stagnant, you get found out, blah blah blah, whatever. There has to be some tweaks along the line. I don't know. You tell me.
So let me just put this one out then. In terms of what we're talking about, not necessarily having to make wholesale changes. Do you think that possibly the reason why we may have to do that for Virgil is because he doesn't have a consistent partner beside him all the time? It's not always Konate, it's not always Matip. Sometimes it's Gomez. And we just don't have that consistent pairing to have that yin and yang that you talk about, which you're perfectly correct on. That most good defensive setups are made up of one defender who does one thing and the other defender who does another, almost like that old stopper sweeper system from
exactly.
the 60s to the 80s. But the problem for us, do you think, and Scott as well, is we might have the sweeper, but the stopper keeps changing, and that might be more difficult to manage. Do you think Virgil's change of play, and to that we might have to go to a full scale change because the unit would have to become more important rather than the individual players? What do you think?
Yeah, I fully agree. The lack of consistency when it comes to a partner for Virgil definitely plays into the lack of consistency in his own play, because there's a difference between trying to, let's say, come across and cover for a Konate who's stepping up and going for headers versus Joe Gomez, who's generally kind of playing on the back foot and covering space. Because there is an inconsistency with that, Virgil generally probably to far better than we can ever notice ourselves, he is accommodating those changes and he's doing the best he can, which is probably, far more seamless than I can ever imagine, any of us stepping into a game and changing a partner. But for sure, because there's a lack of consistency with who he has next to him, inevitably it's going to turn to personal issues, whether he's in the wrong spot or, thinking about who's next to him covering him, whether they have the pace to cover him, based on if he goes up for a header or not, all those things that go into what ifs or 50-50s and decision making. You can be caught between two heads.
Just for Brian's to relax his nerves there a little bit, we weren't actually advocating turning to a sweeper style system. It's just that's the most obvious example of where one defender does one thing and another defender does another thing, but you need that consistent pairing. I was just, as we were talking there, before we move on to the last thing for tonight, I was just thinking, Leicester, probably, as far as I'm concerned, the best league campaign in the history of the Premier League. If not the history of the maybe Forest and Derby in the 70s. But Robert Huth and Wes Morgan, you could set your watch to them two being the centre-back pair for Leicester. And if they weren't there, they probably would have been in the relegation scrap rather than the title race. Hansen and Lawrenson, what was his name? Steve Bruce and Gary Pallister. There's always these consistent partnerships. And Virgil just hasn't had them, has he? At least this season. But let's move on for the last major thing for tonight. To tie everything up, we're going to go to Brighton weekend. We're going to play against Caicedo. We're not going to have Virgil, I believe, and we may not have Nunes. How do we approach this one, Jamie?
I mean, it's typically a high-scoring game. Wasn't it 3-3 last time out?
Yeah,
I know. What's your man, the manager called? Deserby? What?
You were close enough, Deserby.
Yeah, right. He deserves a couple of goals against them.
Just as you do that pun, there's my pun as well.
No, but apparently, his teams. Who did he used to manage? I forget the team.
The Ukrainian outfit
but his teams concede a lot. So I'm hoping.
So does that mean the midfielder's got to be called Concedo now?
I think there's a lot of rumors that Ox is going to be the false nine. A lot of rumors that Ox is going to be the false nine and Gakpo's on the left wing. Maybe I would possibly prefer to see Gakpo through the middle, and I don't know. Ox out on the left doesn't really work out either. But there's arguments that you could split that a couple of different ways. Maybe Mo through the middle. Maybe Ox does play that sort of false nine role. Either way, I'd like to believe that we can outscore them. So it's gonna be fun. I say, Scott, with tongue firmly in cheek.
Scott, how do you see the game going?
Oh man, high scoring. Yeah, I think that they are very impressive going forward. I think that they commit a lot of men into the attack. I think that they generally rely on a strong midfield, which is certainly our antithesis, it seems like, this season. So when it comes to us attacking, I just assume that we're going to rely on counterattacks and speed. Maybe giving it to Mo and let him do his magic. I go into every game optimistic. I think that our squad does have talent to get any job done, but the reality is it is going to be a tight and or long game, because regardless of whether it's a tight game or not, I think that there will be plenty of nerves from Brighton's attacks, without a doubt.
Scott, if you were to put a score on it, what would it be?
When we just turned to this topic, first thing that came to my head was 3-2, Liverpool winning. I think that it will be an end-to-end game. I think that there will be tons of counterattacks. It's just a matter of if our defense has the speed to catch up to it, because frankly, the midfield's not going to be there to help them.
Jamie, where do you see going score was?
I mean, it's going to be high scoring. Has to be. A 3-3 certainly isn't out of the question. Let's hope for a 3-2 or a 3-1. And we're on the winning end of that. Alan says he can't see Brighton losing to Liverpool. Easy, don't watch, mate.
I'm gonna just to yin and yang it out to tie us up for tonight. I'm gonna go for a 0-0. Just to balance it out. That's not necessarily how I think it's gonna go, but you have to talk to the universe about these things. So we can't leave tonight and let Scott go to his nicely Parmesan encrusted salmon without the threshold question.
Still waiting for me.
So here's the question, boys. If you were stuck on the Titanic as it was sinking and you're falling into the water and you had to grab onto one of either Neil Ruddock or Neville Southall as your flotation device, which one would you choose?
Southall. He's got to save you, hasn't he?
Good man, Jamie. Good man. To be fair, though, Scott, Neil Ruddock has a lot more ballast.
Yeah, probably so. I think that I can at least get on, the top half and be able to sit down, have a cup of tea or something like that, right?
It was a trick question. BJ got the right answer.
Speaking of being...
We'll be going down singing You Never Walk Alone.
On that crazy note, and that will be that for tonight. There's no fantasy show this evening. But we will see everybody on Monday for the Monday night podcast, the EPL review show, and we will be back next Thursday for more ASTV. as the cool kids are calling it, all three of us. We will let Scott get to his salmon, and we will let Jamie get back to his musical lessons for his young daughter. Or the whiskey, whichever he needs the most.
He needs the whiskey for the lessons. It goes hand in hand.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it just remains to say, make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, listen to us on Spotify, join us in the Discord channels where you can hear more nonsense with probably 57% more swear words, especially if Jamie's typing. And we will see you next week. Enjoy the game at the weekend. Peace out.
Thank you, guys.
Up the mighty depressing Reds.